You said, what? How to put the fear of God in a man? Tell him you pregnant.
I've been with him 4 years and we still ain't moved out or have a ring, and currently he has no job. Then you're a prisoner. You've been kidnapped by a broke man. Stephen Hawking, he cheated on his wife and he couldn't even talk. See it. Look left if you won't see it. Look right if you don't. He looked at left. He said. And he did it twice. Physically decrepit and unable to do anything, but he still found a way to cheat. So when you ask me, do all men cheat? And I use him as a reference. Don't be an act.
I'm so sick and tired of the modern dating pool.
Oh, what's your favorite color?
Don't you dare say some nonsense like chartreuse. Stop it. You're not French. Let's just cut to the chase. How much is in your bank account and how much do you hate your father? Quickly. I know that I'm not the problem. All of my friends reassure me that I'm a catch. And only 2 of them have ankle bracelets. What is a gal to do? Well, fear not. What was that? Do you want to reap the benefits of traditional gender roles, but with none of the expectations of making bundt cakes and actually having to listen or care about a man? Yes! Well, I've got the perfect subsection of female hypergamy for you. Sprinkle, sprinkle. The past few videos, I've explored the decenter men movement and the make his pockets hurt trend. And now I will get into the peak of female hypergamous philosophies. Now, for all of you who are not perpetually online, hypergamous just means marrying up. Now, the philosophy we're gonna cover in this video is a personal favorite of mine because it comes with the best sound bites.
What do you do if a man says he hates makeup? Tell him don't wear it. I hope you hate makeup. I hope you don't catch you putting none on. Sprinkle, sprinkle.
We're going to be talking about the sprinkle, sprinkle movement. Or, I'm sorry, sprinkle, sprinkle. The term itself was popularized by the creator Shera 7. However, the general philosophy of ensuring that you're financially provided for in every way by a man is nothing new. A lot of these red pill dating strategies try to present themselves as being rooted in rationale and understanding how human nature works. I mean, the whole concept of taking the red pill, which is a Matrix reference, speaks to you finally awakening and realizing the truth behind reality and how it really works. This isn't to say that every single talking point that comes out of these subcultures is inherently wrong, but when you start peeling back the layers of what they're actually saying, you know, like a ripe onion, at its core, it's actually a very desperate attempt to try and control to the best of your ability the outcome of relationships, or at least the conditions of those relationships, in order to avoid getting taken advantage of. This is why so many of the people that are drawn to these philosophies have a lifetime of either rejection or a track record of heartbreak and disappointment. As I stated in my previous video, the core of these movements is self-preservationism. The thought process being that if I'm emotionally guarded, or just completely emotionally checked out and callous, and strategic, right, then I can get what I need from these relationships without getting bamboozled. You can hear it in the way a lot of these figures talk about romance, just how guarded and fundamentally distrusting they are.
I've had love for women, but I'm never gonna fall in love with a woman, because when you fall in love with a woman, what happens is you start to lose grounding and you start to lose that rational thought.
Because you just got to be vulnerable.
No, because I understand that men and women are different, and men love women far differently than women love men. Men love women for real. Women love men.
Women love men for real.
No, they don't. Women love men under the premise that they provide value. Men love women idealistically. Women tend to love men more from an opportunistic standpoint.
Men do not love you. They tolerate you. They lust you. That's it. Never do anything based on thinking that he loves you. Only do it based on your best interest. But he loves the way you cook, the way you clean, the way he can sleep with you whenever he wants for free. That's what he loves.
Now, it's not like they are entirely wrong about there being transactional aspects of a relationship. And there are many people that didn't realize until it was too late that their partner never loved them. They loved what they did for them. So they're tapping into a valid grievance for millions of people. I don't agree with the statement that, you know, a man or a woman can never actually genuinely love you. This is a sentiment that usually is reached after you have had your heart shattered like a porcelain tea set in an earthquake. And a lot of these viewers are very open about their heartbreak. In order to understand what Shera 7 is talking about, you have to get cheated on by a man you were so deeply in love with and make sure that lesson changes you forever. ever. You'll realize that men never really fall in love with women. Now, in the case of the man featured in that clip, who is Myron from the Fresh and Fit podcast, again, for those who are not perpetually online, based on what he has disclosed about his past, I don't think he's ever actually had a genuine heartbreak. So in his case, I'm a little confused as to where all of that specific hurt is coming from. But there are men who, you know, like these women, have actually been betrayed and might resonate with his sentiment, as inaccurate as it is. This is a very deliberate reinforcement of the fear that you can never trust who you are with. You're just looking at them laying in your bed. You might as well douse them in salt, watch them shrivel up like the leech that they are. You can't really understand the rise of the sprinkle sprinkle movement and the general female hypergamous dating advice subculture without first addressing the rise of the red pill. Because Shera has actually been making videos online since, you know, the year of Harambe. Michael Jackson, Elvis, and Tupac faked their deaths? Wait, let her speak. She'd vlog, she'd talk about manifestation and dating and men, etc. So she is not new to this. However, her rise in popularity over the past few years is definitely due to women desiring their own version of a hypergamous dating philosophy. This isn't really a counter movement. This is more the flip side of the same red pill coin. Since a lot of the foundational beliefs that are espoused by both are identical, I don't think that Shera 7's philosophy and the Manosphere are interchangeable, especially in terms of how much damage they can inflict. I think there are aspects of the sprinkle sprinkle philosophy that are bad, and counterproductive at that. We'll get into the details of that later. When looking at like the female side of the hypergamy, you know, dating advice subculture, there are way fewer creators and they're significantly less influential compared to the red pill creators, at least. The latter having way more sway over young boys, like kids, really. I mean, they're teenagers, but they're children. An important thing to remember whenever listening to any one of these individuals giving dating advice, okay, which is a factor that I don't think people emphasize enough. Most of this advice is being espoused by people who do not have good dating lives. Across the board, we have divorces, multiple children born out of wedlock. I mean, just offspring sprinkled around like confetti. Or we have the individuals that admit to having very limited dating histories and with practically no serious relationships. And none of them are currently married or in a healthy, long-term committed relationship. None of them. I mean, the proof is in the pudding. Their mentality and their values have not yielded good results. The hypergamous women fare slightly better. Shera was actually married when she started making her content. There's some other smaller creators that are also married.
My friend of 7 years lives with me. We are 50-50. I think maybe he will step it up. But maybe not. Okay, now we're getting honest. Okay, so he's not a boyfriend, so let's downgrade him into he's just a man that's smooching off of you. Times a squatter, that's it.
But there are other figures within the subculture who are not as lucky. The creator, the wizard Liz, is the biggest example, but there are worse examples like the creator, the trophy wife. We will get into the horror story of that situation later on in this video. In the case of the Fresh and Fit podcast guys, the co-host Walter knocked up some random, vaguely foreign IG model and tried to convince her to go and get it taken care of, let's just say, because remember, these men have family values. Myron has been open about the fact that his most recent girlfriend, Angie, was the only serious relationship he's ever had, and their dynamic was unique, to say the least.
Last time you had a girlfriend prior to Angie?
Not really.
Because
No.
you've never had a girlfriend in your life until you dated a foreign girl.
Not like yeah. But the thing is that we don't argue. I do what the I want to do. She's loyal to me. It's monogamous on her end, open on my end. You know where she's at right now? She's hanging out with my parents, living a great life. She don't got to worry about shit. And she's smart enough to understand this bothers me a little bit that I know that he's with other women. I understand that he cares about me, he loves me, provides for me.
I'm not sneaking around in my own fucking house. My girl don't talk back to me. There's no arguments. This is how it is. She packs my fucking condoms when I travel. That's how real it is.
Imagine the man that you're seeing asking you to perform this humiliation ritual. The American Horror Story theme would start playing in my head, and all I would see is red. My head would do a 180-degree spin like a barnyard owl. He's lucky that she did not poke holes in that Jimmy like it was a froyo punch card. Have fun on Maury. This girl had already swallowed the toxic lie that, well, you know, all men are gonna cheat anyway. I mean, she's not happy about him stepping out with every broad in the greater Miami area that can pull off a bodycon dress. But at least he's honest.
And
well, they're no longer together. She had to go to therapy after this relationship, and now she's happily booed up, rollerblading around town with her new amour. Now, Angie knew what she was getting herself into. It's not like you can say Myron was misrepresenting his stance on fidelity, you know, as well as all of his other views. But I know, who would have thought that this value system and mindset was not conducive to fostering a healthy relationship? Everyone.
What would you do if I couldn't cook?
You'd be single.
Can you cook?
That's irrelevant.
No. Can you cook though?
I mean, can you fight? Let's ask pointless questions.
How is that a pointless question? I'm trying to get to know you.
Because that's your job.
What's my job?
To make sandwiches.
Did he actually just say, my job is to make sandwiches?
How am I going to fight off the intruders if you don't make sandwiches? I need sustenance.
This speaks to the underlying selfishness of a lot of these transactional red pill relationships. They're never doing anything for their partner just because. It's a, well, you know, I'm protecting you from a hypothetical, mind you, home intruder, so you better be performing domestic labor or X, Y, and Z. It's not even coming from a place of genuine protectiveness. Every act is simply a means to an end. There is no actual consideration for the other person. And they will push this to an almost comical degree.
I stopped waiting to be asked, and I've never seen my wife more at peace. So this is a ritual, and even worse, he's filming himself doing this ritual and posting it on social media. You're done for, dude. She's gonna divorce you, and then you're gonna try dating again, and the women you date are gonna see this. Your life is over.
And then you guys wonder why women are so comfortable and so entitled. Because you post stupid and they think that, oh yeah, guys should just be cleaning for me too. I'm a queen.
Yeah.
Guys, just be the breadwinner, dude. Like, make the money, let her stay at home with the kids, so you don't have to do stupid like this. Boy, if you don't get...
What? Hello? You can't even make this up. Now that being said, okay, I always believe that it's never too late for anyone, okay? I mean, not that I'm that self-actualized, but you know what I mean. It doesn't have to be like this. I have a suspicion that Myron isn't even out there thoughting and bopping like that, no. I think that he just wants one boo to cuddle with. She makes him protein shakes. She calls him her silly rabbit.
His what?
His silly rabbit.
His silly rabbit?
Yes.
Is that what he calls you?
No.
I will never get tired of playing that clip. He can bark all he wants, but I don't even think he's a dog like that. I don't buy it. Okay, so now that you get a general overview of some of the worst aspects, right, of the Manosphere movement, this sort of mentality is setting the backdrop. And considering this is what was being, you know, funneled to the mandem for several years, not necessarily being absorbed by all of them, but certainly having some level of influence, right? There were a lot of women who pushed back against this, but there was also a subsection of women who saw this, right? And we're not against the idea of hypergamy in principle, or the concept of transactional relationships. But their desire was more to marry well and implement some of these tactics. However, they needed to ensure that they would be getting the upper hand. What a lot of these women, and this is a very important factor to keep in mind, right? And I think that this, as opposed to romance, was a much bigger motive for these women, and is also something that you can see in most people generally who are drawn to these sorts of movements, is the desire to escape the Kafkaesque nightmare that is working a 9-to-5 job. Okay, it's why so many of these Manosphere figures will sell these sham courses that'll allegedly teach you how to become, you know, self-employed and make passive income and yada yada yada. Everyone, not even just in this movement, but so many aspects of our culture are people trying desperately, okay, to escape the reality of being a wage slave. So a lot of these women, and especially when you hear them talk and the emphasis on money, yeah, the desire here is actually to be free from, you know, the shackles of capitalism. This is a video essay. I had to mention capitalism in some capacity, okay? I had to meet that one quota. They yearn for that way more than an actual husband. So this niche was created, and someone had to fill the demand. There had been creators like that had reached some level of success over the years. One creator rose to prominence through a mixture of quick-wittedness and having the vibe of a world-weary auntie, Dior lipstick stain on her cigarette type vibe. Now, first, Shera had a level of presence and humor that, let's be real, a lot of people in these spaces just don't have.
I'm not bringing nothing to the table, baby. Sprinkle, sprinkle. If you want a woman to bring something to the table, go to IHOP. Go to the restaurant where you can tip her, baby. Sprinkle, sprinkle. Because if I bring something to the table, you're going to be mad because it's going to be another man who's going to not ask me to bring something to the table. He's going to take care of the bill, them kids, and everybody else. And you, if you look broke. And remember, men will put a paper bag over your head. and still be aroused. So does their validation even matter?
Where do you like to be kissed? In front of the ATM?
How do you know if you the ugly friend? Ask a child that don't know you.
Not to mention that there's a lot of ladies out there that have never had a woman in their life, especially an older woman, talk to them frankly about men or intimacy. Because this is true for like a lot of the red pill creators, right? There's like a parental void that many of them are filling. I'd say it was around maybe 2022 that you started to see Shera's popularity rise. That's around the time that I first heard sprinkle sprinkle. So other female dating coaches would emphasize the man being a provider or maybe a bit more traditional or chivalrous, sure. But there was still the expectation and desire for love and an actual emotional connection. Shera is not so sentimental. It's get to the bag at any cost.
They feel about an always angry man, but he pays bills. I don't hear no anger. All I hear is bills paid.
So the idea is that if you absorb the fact, right, that these men are never gonna actually love you, I mean, for the most part, not really, they're just gonna love what you do for them, then you're not gonna fall for their mind games. And that way, no matter what, you can ensure that you are taken care of. She also has a ruthlessness to her, which spoke to a lot of women who didn't just want to finally be the one who was running the game, right? But frankly, there's a lot of vengeance here, right? A lot of these women, they want to get revenge against not even just the men who hurt them, but against men sort of collectively. It's not exactly subtle, and you can see a lot of this unresolved trauma in these women's comments. I will only marry for money. My love is reserved for myself, animals, and children. I will never expect anything out of men but financial gain. I've trained myself to enjoy the rush they give, but to never get attached to the feeling. It will always be fleeting with them. From watching fairy tales growing up thinking I'll find my prince one day, to getting cheated on, really killed that lover girl in me. Got cheated on pregnant, and I was never the same. I swear I view life so differently now. My mom died last year and was with my dad for 40 plus years. He was talking about finding a new girlfriend the next day. You have to be broken to understand what she means. I wouldn't really compare these sentiments to the ones expressed amongst the viewers of a lot of these red pill podcasts, because most of them seem to be coming from a place of getting rejected as opposed to heartbroken by someone they actually were in love with. You tend to see that more in movements like the men going their own way crowd, right? Where it's, you know, divorced men who have been, you know, scorned by women, right? That's where you tend to see the sort of the flip side of this level of distrust. Regardless, there are certain spaces where, okay, I hate to get like metaphysical here, but there is a palpable pain and resentment that emanates from a lot of these posts. And that's not to say that their grievances are not valid. It's just, you can just sense there's a lot of hurt here. So when Shera comes in with none of that, you know, fairy tale lovey-dovey talk, and instead says, I'm not gonna help you find love or loyal companionship. That rarely even exists. I'm not gonna help you find, you know, a man who will brush your thinning witch-like hair as you get older and sip sweet tea with you on a porch like it's a Norman Rockwell painting. No, I'm just here to teach you how to get your bills paid, right? And have a man take care of you. That's it. And considering that, again, she was one of the only figures in these hypergamous dating spaces that was actually in a long-term marriage with a man who was, you know, taking care of her, that did lend her a credibility that most of these other dating advice gurus just don't have. Now, as you would imagine, if the objective of this lifestyle is to secure the bag at any cost, you will have to contend with the fact that this will probably require some shady and unethical tactics, and getting involved with men who, well, frankly, are being just as shady as you are. Now, Shera has never framed herself as being a role model, and I don't think that self-awareness justifies unethical behavior, but the further down the rabbit hole that you go, the more you realize that there is no such thing as a free lunch. This lifestyle will require you to compromise a lot of your values. Now, Shera had a backstory that many of her viewers could relate to. She too was once in love with a dusty, smells like a broke boy.
In love with a dusty. I was in love with this dusty. There was nothing you could tell me that would stop my love for this dust. I don't care. And so, but I was only 17, you know.
She was a people pleaser, non-confrontational, and she got taken advantage of as a result. But it was at age 19 where she leveled up, after being put through the ringer by the mandem, so she started listening to her older sister's advice.
I was harassed, I was talked down to, I was hated on just for trying to be in a career that I had passion for. So after being, disappointed and upset, I decided to try my sister's way.
By the time that she was in her early 20s, she had been hustling, always holding down a job, and even by this point, she was just ready to find a provider. She had, kind of dated men who had means, but eventually, she met a man named James. His exact age is a bit hard to lock down, but she states that she was 22, and he was around, 48-ish, but that's just to say there was a pretty big age gap between them.
We dated basically every day for 2 weeks, okay? After 2 weeks, he was like, he was trying to get some, and I'm like, I don't have sex outside of relationships, okay? So, I'm sorry. He's like, okay, well then, let's become a couple. You want to be my girlfriend? I'm like, well, I don't date guys that, I wouldn't date a guy seriously unless they could do certain things for me. And he's like, what do you mean? And this is where this is where I dropped it on him, that I needed him to pay all my bills, okay? If I'm going to date them seriously and be attracted to them and feel like, secure with them, I need them to take care of my bills. And he's like, oh, well, how much are your bills? And so I gave him the price, and he's like, oh, I can do that. That's not a problem. Don't worry about it. I can give you that. No problem. I was like, okay. While he was paying my car notes, my bills and stuff, I had a chance to go to school. I had a chance to, get a second degree, and he paid for my school. He paid for my school, y'all. He paid for my school.
They eventually got married and were together for about 20 years until James' passing, which happened sometime last year. And together they have 2 daughters. Now, remember when I said that there is no such thing as a free lunch? Well, turns out James was married when they met.
When I met James, he was married and he had a girlfriend, but I didn't know. Didn't know, because of course guys lie. All of a sudden, his phone starts ringing, and it says home. I'm like, home? Hello? It was his wife. She's like, who is this? I was like, who is this? She said, this is James' wife. I said, oh, this is James' girlfriend. And she was like, no, well, you're not the girlfriend that I know about. So she already knew about the other girlfriend. She knew about me.
I knew there was a catch to the sprinkle. Now, some viewers were like, I don't know if you were that oblivious. I love this lady, I swear I do, but Mrs. Shera, you knew that man was married. Look, I cannot make any unsubstantiated claims, okay? But given her leniency towards men straying and using married men for money, this is not the craziest theory.
If a man approaches you like that, and you're interested, but you say no because he's married, and you explain to him that, and he still comes after you, well, that means he's ready to have what's coming to him, okay, y'all? And when I say that, that's an open invitation to steal him from his wife. And I'm not trying to be rude. I know a lot of women are going to be mad at me, but if your husband goes out looking for other women, and she turns him down, and he still goes after her, he does not respect you, and he's giving her an invitation to get him to leave you, okay? So let me tell you. So ladies, don't be mad, because I'm going to give 2 parts of the story, okay? One is not going to be moral, and one is going to be like, you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that. But I'm going to tell y'all, women do steal husbands, and I'm going to tell y'all how they do it. And if you're one of those women who want to steal a husband, well, just keep listening, okay? As a woman, you're a woman who's dating a married man, just collect this money, girl.
Now again, I gotta pull a Wendy Williams. Allegedly. I can't make any definitive claims. Now, she does state that she left James after this discovery, but that man came crawling back.
I broke up with him. Okay? So I'm gonna take a little break from you. Go handle your business. Go be with your girlfriend, your wife, whoever. He came back begging, calling me on the phone, begging me to come back. Just begging. And I'm like, no. Will you just meet me out for dinner, please? I just want to see you one more time. Just one more time. It's like, where are we going to eat? Food is always the weakness. So after dinner, of course, he thinks everything is okay and that we're going to make up and get back together and go to his place or whatever. And I'm like, oh, I got to go home. Will you just come to my house tonight? No, I got to go home. please. He gave me like a big thing of red roses in a crystal vase. And he's like, please, I love you. I love you. I want you to be with me. I'm getting rid of everybody. I got rid of everybody for you. I promise. I'm like, nope.
Now, obviously, they got back together, and he eventually put a ring on it. Now, marrying a man who showed you that he had no respect for his vows, but also had another girlfriend on top of that, so he was cheating on 2 women simultaneously. Getting back together with a man like that is telling, but remember, secure the bag at any cost. This is the cost. When involved in this lifestyle, I guess, technically speaking, it is a lifestyle, and especially if you're dealing with men who are actually funding your whole life. Right, because we're not just talking about, oh, you know, they always pay for dinner, they buy you gifts on occasion, you know, no. That's seen as like elementary. The expectation is that he is paying your bills, like he's paying for everything. And then some, right?
That Dusty can't cover every bill you got, plus more, and give you a direct deposit. You're single.
Ideally, I mean, he's got you blinged out like a Dubai housewife. The more willing and capable a man is to even be able to meet those financial demands, usually the compromise is that you're dealing with a sketchier man, and they know that the more that they are forking over, the more willing that you might be to actually tolerate increasingly more absurd levels of skullduggery. And the reason that a lot of those men have that mindset is because they know there are enough women who will just take the diamond ring and shut up. You know what I mean? Which, I mean, at a certain point, that speaks, you know, to their character or lack thereof. And sometimes that includes accepting the fact that this man already got a woman. And in some cases, there are kids involved in that, right? This is where you'll start to see pushback from her audience, like, I don't know about this girl. I mean, there are still women defending this stance or, you know, not being adamantly against it. So look, when someone tells you who they are, believe them. Now, going further down the rabbit hole, I remember a while back, people were like, you gotta be careful because this woman is a witch. And I said, what are you talking about? Like metaphorically or? Nope, she's straight up casting spells.
Every time you do a spell and your magic works, you get more and more powerful. Like each spell that you do, each spell that you work, you gain more insight into how magic really works. And so you start, you know, changing it up a bit or getting more confident, adding more, spell work to your list. You find new ways to do things and your magic starts working for you really well. Okay. But you have to keep practicing. You have to keep going. Like if you just do one spell or spell work as you need it, you might not be as good as the next witch or practitioner who does it every other day or every week.
She's straight up using binding spells on her husband.
The only spell you should have on your man is a binding spell when you first get with him, to bind him to you. So a binding spell with someone you are with and happy with at the time is the best time to do it. Don't wait till it's too late. Don't think you don't need it, because in this age and day in society, I say you do need binding spells.
What? Oh. Okay.
I think this was really the point where some of her fans were like, maybe it's time to back away slowly. This is where I tune out Shera. Cha, I don't want nobody this bad. Nah, I was good with you on the sprinkle, but not the spells. Somebody alert Azalea Banks. There's another broad in the chat doing brujeria. Now, I know that there are people in my audience who are not very religious, right? Even then, this is still weird. Could you imagine if you found out your partner was lighting candles and casting spells where they're binding you to them using Target plastic bags, not even name brand like Ziploc, the store brand? I'm getting discount value voodoo? This gotta be violating some sort of pagan ethical guidebook. I mean, this is basically like a love spell that the other party did not consent to. This also does beg the question. If you really had the sauce like that, right, that feminine mystique, because it's not always about looks, and that is something that does get emphasized by a lot of these women, is like, it's not just about looks, about, you know, that pull in men. You gotta have a little something to you, right? If you really had the sauce like that, would you need to resort to this? I'm just saying, the amount of women co-signing this in the comments, God help y'all. Now, I guess that's the weirdest pit stop on this journey, but keeping within the theme of having a sort of cavalier attitude towards unethical behavior. The sprinkle mindset, much like the Red Pill podcast bros, tends to frame male infidelity as, you know, something that you should just kind of expect.
I said, but aren't there some men that don't cheat? Yeah, they in the cemetery. At one point, somebody gonna cheat somewhere, somehow, some way. Period. How can you find a loyal man? Lock him up in the basement.
And find them every time you need them.
So the belief is that either you're gonna get a rich man or a loyal man, but rarely, if ever, are you gonna get both.
What I'm trying to explain to you ladies is if you got a guy that checks off all the boxes, you got to pay the price for that man checking all those boxes. He didn't check all those boxes off to just f you.
Here's the thing. Men are as only loyal as their options. Okay? As loyal as their options. If you deal with a certain caliber of man, you're going to probably have to accept that he's going to be open on his end and you're going to be closed on yours.
Would you rather cry in the Toyota Corolla or Rolls Royce?
So as long as a man is providing for you, you just gotta tolerate his wandering eye. Now, Shera's attitude towards infidelity is, it's not framing it as a deal breaker, but she's not telling you to just take it laying down. The difference is that her advice would probably be to just like, I don't know, cheat back, but still keep him in your roster if he's still paying for stuff, right? Or, better yet, hit him where it hurts.
And they're looking at another woman. Look at cars. Because a man can be cute and broke, and he knows you ain't going nowhere. But looking at cars is totally different. Oh my God, look, there's a Bentley. I wonder who's driving that. You know, that way he sees. You're not looking at looks, you're looking at money. I mean, yeah. Don't look at other men, look at cars. That'll get them.
Like I said, this is the flip side, not a counter movement. So there is a lot of overlap in the general advice that these people will give you to attract a man of means. The biggest one being to invest in your looks, your demeanor, and your femininity. As Kevin Samuels, the godfather of the Manosphere, would say, you gotta be fit, feminine, friendly. Or as Shera would put it,
rich men like certain types of women. Look at all the rich men and look at their wives. What do they all have in common besides being pretty? What else do they have in common? They're feminine, first and foremost, classy. They're not loud and obnoxious. They shut it up. They don't outshine their husband. My friend who was a little ratchet and she ended up marrying wealthy. She had to totally change everything about herself. The way she dressed, the way she wore her hair, the way she spoke, the kind of shoes she wore, the makeup. She had to change it all. How she acted around people, how she spoke to men. She had to change everything. It's not that she changed who she was inside or her personality. It's that she changed who she was around men. There's a difference.
Some of the other advice you get from this subculture is not inherently bad. You know, like they'll emphasize not being an emotional liability, stop being a doormat. Frankly, I think a lot of people actually really need to absorb that one. There's a massive emphasis, obviously, on men being financially stable and being the provider. That's the foundational principle, really, of these dating philosophies. And of course, to the best of your ability, do not make stupid, very consequential life choices like having a kid with someone who you should have never been having a kid with, right? Or attaching yourself to people who, look, I hate to be harsh, but let's be real, are going to be considered liabilities for whatever reason. So a lot of the advice that you can apply practically to your life, it's not unique to these subcultures and it's general. I mean, for the most part, it's common sense, but you got to remember there are a lot of people out there that actually did not have like stable parental figures that were instilling these things in them. So they kind of have to start from scratch as adults, and these gurus fill that void. Now, does following this advice guarantee anything? Obviously not. But it can provide you with more options. And that's especially true for the emphasis that they put on investing in your looks as a woman. The biggest difference and where these ideologies, start to shift is that Shera and her ilk are not interested in submitting to a man. I mean, not really. Or being a housewife in the traditional sense. They're certainly not trying to do any domestic labor. They want the perks of having a provider, but with as few of the gendered expectations on their end. It's a weaponization of the feminine, ensuring that you get an upper hand on these men. The hope being that if you master this game of femininity, you understand the rules of the game, you invest into the things that might help you level up, then you might be able to escape labor. Because again, that's what this is. This isn't necessarily a desperate attempt to get picked by a man for the sake of it, or to get his companionship. They're trying to escape being a wage slave.
If he loves you, why are you still working for somebody else 12 hours a day while coming home cooking and cleaning while he's sitting on the couch? If he loves you.
Interestingly enough, the expectation that these men should be granted access to their bodies, rather quickly at that, is still present. The fact that being intimate with these men is, a given, is odd when you consider the attitude towards domestic labor. I always find it so strange how cooking and cleaning is framed as wives' work, right? And you see this sort of across the internet where someone will be whipping up, French toast or something and talking about, ooh, wifey. But no, being intimate with him is actually wifey, right? Especially from a historical standpoint. That's the more consequential and emotionally impactful act. The flex in this movement of like, you know, I don't lift a finger for this man and all my bills are still getting paid. I don't do anything for this man and he still takes care of me. Well, you are actually doing something for him. You're sleeping with him, aren't you? Intimacy is way more valuable and rare than domestic labor. And best believe that these men, especially if they're financing your whole life, again, remember, the advice is you're getting bills paid. Best believe the second that you get the notification to your bank account, right, that the money for your rent, hair, nails, bail money, I don't know what y'all get up to on the weekend. The second that money is deposited and you hear that ping, that man is going to be at your door with a honey pack and a DVD collection of Frasier to fall asleep to after. Because if he's able to just casually support your entire lifestyle, let's be for real, he's probably like 59. If he doesn't pull up with a sleep apnea machine, consider yourself lucky. So any comment, you know, under one of these videos that says something to the effect of, you know, I followed Shera's advice and now everything is getting paid for, you best believe they are 100% laying down with him. And it's probably more than that. I bet they're probably like listening to his problems and hearing his takes on why J. Cole is overrated or something. Providing some sort of emotional labor. The classic dim-witted rebuttal. Well, don't you sleep with broke men and do all this and that for them for free? This rebuttal will only work on an individual who is so accustomed to making foolish life choices, okay, right, where the maladaptive behavior is the default, that any alternative looks better in comparison. It's already so concerning that there are enough women who are accustomed to being intimate with men who gave them absolutely nothing but emotional trauma, that this is a preferable alternative. I said this in my last video. That dynamic should have never been normalized. If that was not already the norm for a lot of people, we wouldn't even be having this conversation. It reinforces the notion that your body is a commodity and is up for sale and is still being accessed by men who I would argue have just as little emotional investment in you as, I mean, the Dusties whose, you know, waterbed you were laying on. But this time it's okay just as long as they fork over rent money. That's what you're worth? $1,500? In my previous video on the Make His Pockets Hurt movement, I noticed that in a lot of these spaces, intimacy is not framed as a mutually enjoyable experience. It's a means to an end. So if people think that working a 9-to-5 and selling your physical labor can be emotionally exhausting, you are out of your mind. If you think that forcing yourself really to be intimate with a man, or multiple men actually, because you'll be advised to have a roster.
How to respond when he said he didn't get paid yet? Go to the other one and get his money.
Who you're clearly not that into emotionally or physically, because frankly, like, the older and less attractive they are, the better your chances. And that's another little tidbit of advice that you'll be given here, right? If you think forcing yourself to do that, you know, on a regular basis is not going to have deleterious psychological effects on you, you're crazy. A lot of these women are self-admitted, like, former lover girls in recovery, but whatever unresolved emotional trauma they have is only gonna be made worse by this. Baby, you're not outsmarting the game. You just girl bossified hooking. Now, for the ladies that still want to dabble in this lifestyle, the rules are pretty straightforward. Never date a dusty, aka a man who has no money. You are only loyal to yourself, and maybe in the future your children, but right now, just to yourself, right? Like, you shouldn't even necessarily be loyal to the man that you're seeing.
When you leave out the house and another man walks up to you and you know he got more money, you're single. You're not in a relationship. Listen to what I'm telling you. When you leave your house and you have a dusty somewhere, do not claim him. He does not count. Why? Because you don't want him.
Don't ever let your emotions get the better of you. Don't be clingy.
Leave him alone. Do not text. Why are you going to look for him? He ain't coming to look for you, man. If he's old, he might be dead. All right, so check the obituaries. He haven't called you since Sunday. He don't want to call you. Listen to my words.
Be as emotionally detached as possible. And most importantly, you marry for money, and if you're lucky, the love will come after. Now, Shera is open about the fact that most of the men who will be able to provide a lifestyle like this for you are probably gonna be older and not necessarily your type.
Now, I keep telling y'all, he wasn't the most attractive person, but he wasn't ugly. He was just not my type. My type used to be tall, handsome, model type, you know, suave, you know, just, that was my type. Because they're not important anymore, okay? It's what somebody can actually
contribute to you and make you better.
She said it herself about her own husband. If anything, the older the better, because when they're old, as she says, they'll take anything young. I mean, seriously, if you still have viable eggs and you don't know what a floppy disk is, that man might let you live off of his social security check. What was that? He used to be in the Navy. Ooh, military benefits. Ka-ching! The emphasis on getting a man with means isn't just so that he can afford to take care of you. It's also avoiding being in the dreaded position of becoming the come-up woman or the starter wife, or as Shera calls them, Barbara the Builder. So a woman who helps, build a man in his business or his personal life, or basically a woman who helps build up a man, especially to become more financially successful, only to be paid dust when he actually achieves his goals. Never marry potential. Always marry a man who's walking in purpose. Now, is there a chance that he'll, appreciate you sticking by him and stay loyal to you? Like, sure, those relationships exist. But if you're looking at this through the lens of just basic risk assessment, it is riskier to invest in someone on the come up. Because one, their success is not even guaranteed. And even if they do become successful, there are men that will go completely mask off and just admit, the second that I get money, I'm actually going to start dating women who are my type. Money doesn't change people, it reveals who they always were. Look, I don't want to frame men as being inherently duplicitous. I am saying, though, that I can understand why an individual would not want to take that risk. Now, there have been videos online for years now advising women on, how to get a rich man, yada yada. And I would always think, right, considering the number of women watching these videos and how ubiquitous the sort of fantasy of marrying well is, right? How many rich men do y'all think there are? Because if we're going to look at the amount of American men making over $100K a year, right? That's about, 25% of men. Most of them being between the ages of 35 to 54. Now, if we are to jump up to 200K a year, right? That number shrinks down to about 3 to 5%. And that's not even excluding the number of these men who are already married, right? Or just not single generally and not looking to cheat. Their location alone eliminates the vast majority of them. So when you actually look at the number of these men that these women will have access to realistically, that number shrinks even more. Now, a 100K salary, that's a good living, right? Especially if you're good with your money and you don't have, insane expenses. But considering the lifestyle that this movement is putting on a pedestal, where you're not even married to this man and he's paying for everything. Usually that means that he has to be making enough to comfortably support two people. Add to that, vacations, luxury goods. I do not think that there is enough supply to meet this demand. At least if the expectations are that high. If you want that truly luxurious sort of lifestyle, the men making that sort of dough is tiny. Not to mention that most of that wealth is concentrated in 5 states and usually metropolitan areas, and of course the WASP purgatory that are the bougie suburbs of Connecticut. All I'm saying is that if you are not living where a lot of this wealth is concentrated, it's gonna be a lot harder. Not impossible, but definitely harder. So much of this female hypergamy and, self-described gold digger content dangles this illusion in front of the average woman that if you adhere to these rigid expectations of femininity and conventional attractiveness or aura or feminine mystique, or whatever is in the handbook, if you douse yourself in hairspray, glitter, and perfume, and just stand in the middle of a Brooks Brothers like a haunted mannequin, then you too might get plucked from obscurity and, made into a comfortable housewife with a light pill problem. That's a chic dependency. The biggest deciding factor in whether or not you marry well has always been proximity, not necessarily your looks. Now, if your femininity or your appearance allows you to enter some of these spaces, then that's another thing. But usually being born into money or being a young professional that is already in the social circles of other people who are doing well financially, that's actually what's going to increase your odds. Especially if you actually want to get married and not just tricked on, for a few years. But most of the men in those spaces, at least the respectable ones, right? They're usually going to be looking for a woman that has a similar level of pedigree. Not necessarily someone who's making as much as them, but for the quality men in these spaces that know that their tax bracket gives them options, they're usually not going to be tricking a woman who they can't envision themselves introducing to their parents on Thanksgiving. You bring over a casserole because it's his people's cuisine. His doting mother tells you, Aw, you seasoned it wrong, but it's okay. And you quietly think to yourself, oh, you're gonna make my life a nightmare, aren't you, you anal retentive witch? If he can't see y'all walking down the aisle and you eventually becoming an emotionally distant mother to little Ajax and Persephone, he's gonna see you as a poor investment. And let's be for real, okay? How many of the women in these spaces, right, do you think are on these men's level? I'm talking like in terms of being a catch. And I don't just mean superficially, okay? The men who emphasize that more than anything, then that's not a quality man to begin with. They've already eliminated themselves. I'm talking about when it comes to actually having meaningful characteristics. I mean, being very disciplined, conscientious, really taking care of themselves. I'm sorry, but most people are not on that level. Using dating apps might make this process a little bit easier, but unfortunately, because so much of that is visual, you're gonna have to look pretty good if you want to stand out, you know, amongst the sea of other pretty women. Using one of those like rich men finder style dating app is probably the worst option because, well, again, if the goal long term is to lock it down, none of these men on those kind of apps are gonna marry you, okay? You don't want to marry a lot of those men. Most of them are not gonna put a ring on it, okay? They just want to commit human rights violations against you on a yacht in Ibiza. You might get like a Chanel bag from them, but I mean, it'll come with like old world syphilis. You're gonna get pulled into a black van by the CDC. The advice given to women who don't have proximity to wealth that you hear in these spaces are basically like, we'll just lop yourself into areas where there are rich people, like a country club, you know, or the bar of an expensive hotel. How do I say this? Y'all sound poor. I'm sorry. All right, but like, look, if you grew up with means, you can attest to this, right? This is how people who have never had access to even just upper middle class levels of wealth talk. What exactly do these women think is gonna happen? That you get all dolled up, you sit at the bar like trying to look aloof, sipping on a martini, doing your best Jennifer Coolidge impression, just trying to catch the eye of a wealthy man. Oh, hey fellas. Oh, I sure do love changing catheters. You know what I adore? Jell-O. Oh, please tell me more about Vietnam. Now, all right, all jokes aside, have there been some success stories of women kind of like randomly getting approached in richer parts of town? Sure, obviously, right? Those things can happen. All I'm saying, okay, is that the exception does not make the rule. More often than not, the amount of women who've tried this approach and failed spectacularly, they're not gonna get on the internet and tell everyone that they tried to do this. And again, like if a man does approach you in some of these spaces, like a bar, even if it's in a bougie location, he's not really looking for a wife, okay? He's not looking for someone to take care of for the rest of their lives and, you know, put in his will, right? Which again, like that's the long-term scam we're running here, right? Because who wants to be hopping around, I mean, from one provider to another, just indefinitely? Your joints are gonna give out. He's usually gonna be looking for one thing. Use your brains, ladies. Not to mention, if the game plan here is basically just to get stopped, right, in one of these spaces, usually you have to look pretty good. I'm talking like double take fine, okay? Or at the very least, you still gotta be pretty, you still gotta be put together. But sometimes there are people that have, how do I say this? They have like an insane level of like aura or mystique to them, which by the way is more rare. Pretty is a dime a dozen. People that have that sort of pull that can't be taught, okay? Either you have it or you don't. That's very, very rare. And a lot of the people in these spaces, y'all don't have it. I'm sorry. I don't know what to tell you, okay? But regardless, you still gotta look pretty good. Again, like if this is a rich man who notices you, right, walking down the street or something, for him to be willing to spend fat stacks on you, right? Not just take you out to like a nice dinner. You gotta look pretty good, right? And not that you just personally think that you look good, okay? In a lot of these spaces, it's so irritating. It's rare to be that level of a knockout, okay? Just be for real. Be honest. Most people don't have the sauce like that. That's why so many of these fantasies, they come off as delusional. In these scenarios, more substantial qualities, they don't mean anything. It's a physical connection combined with, you know, having like a little something else to you. If you don't have that, nothing else matters. He doesn't care that you donate to charity, that you give blood. You're not even an O negative. Now, best case scenario, let's say that you beat the odds. Let's say that you actually manage to find like a very financially stable man who actually wants to marry you. Right? You're locking it down. The hope is that you eventually grow in love. In the case of Shera, you know, she does actually seem to like James and have camaraderie with him.
James, what you doing? Hey, James, what advice do you have for women who want to get married?
Marry themselves.
Marry themselves first?
Yep. The question you should always ask yourself, if I can't live with myself, how can I expect someone else to live with me?
I can live with myself.
Especially after his passing, you could tell that there was a genuine affection between the two of them.
I said that on every live. I said, if I've ever become a widow, I'm never remarrying again. But we were married for 20 years. He was a provider. I never had to pay no bills. He was a good guy, and he will be missed. Sprinkle, sprinkle.
And again, we don't know the details of their love life, right? But that's what it seems like. Now, you might be able to get this, maybe, based on the criteria that you would have used to get this man, right? Which did not emphasize compatibility or attraction. I don't know what the chances are that you're going to be able to form a strong emotional bond with this provider man simply because he's doing acts of service for you. I think a lot of these people don't actually understand how love works. Normally, that genuine sort of connection or fondness is possible if he loves you, right? And him liking you more is emphasized as being necessary for any of these marriages to work.
If you want a good life and a good marriage and a good relationship, he has to love you more. I don't care. That's just how it has to be.
Then that puts you in a sort of moral dilemma here. Because if you married him because he was a provider, again, it's understood you're marrying for money, right? Not because you actually love him, but he loves you. And I'm assuming that they're not telling these men that they're running game on them. Well, in that case, it's unironically evil. You just transformed from being the victim in previous relationships to the villain. I don't think a lot of these women are rancid enough to actually do this. Especially if you really were like an empathetic lover girl. She might be buried deep inside you, but she's still not dead. They can front all they want about, oh, I'm the villain now. Oh, men made me like this. You can never make being a bad person cool. It's not gonna work on me or anyone else with a conscience. The guilt of doing this to someone will eat away at you, okay? From the inside, like the xenomorph from Alien. And eventually, the truth usually comes out violently. More often than not, in the cases of women who do claim, I married for money and the love came after, like this is the problem. The exception does not make the rule. You have no idea what the actual dynamic was in real life, if they actually did have somewhat of an emotional connection to them prior to the marriage, or what the actual quality of that marriage is like now. Now, if the provider man in question doesn't really love you, and I mean, he locked it down with you because, I don't know, you look good, and you can make pleasant small talk at company dinners, attracting the envy of his male co-workers, or quietly on the search for their replacement wives because their first one is now on Metamucil. Well, in that scenario, you kind of met your match. I mean, you'll remain provided for probably, but will either of you ever genuinely love the other one? Probably not. Like, mutually tolerate each other? Yeah, you know, that way you can still enjoy family ski vacations. This doesn't even address the precarious nature of being entirely financially dependent on someone. Because if this man, or these men collectively, are funding your lifestyle, right, again, that's the ideal, right? Shera even says that in her case, she was able to just fully quit her job. That's all fine and dandy in her case because things actually worked out. But the reality of depending on that man for your rent, insurance, groceries, all of your bills, and you don't have money coming in, and again, y'all are not married. Like, if he so much as gets bored of you, you're done. I mean, this is the problem in the current job market. Like, a lot of companies don't even have loyalty to their workers. So unfortunately, you know, being in a financially precarious situation is the reality for most people, right? But I would argue that your job might actually have a bit more loyalty to you than this random man. This is why so many older women who have been in a similar predicament will warn younger women that, like, you know, desiring staying at home and not working is not inherently the problem, but you do need to try your best to have some sort of financial backup. You never know what's going to happen. Your man might lose his job, right? He might get into an accident. Like, there's ways of losing income that are not even within his control. And remember, right? You are exchanging intimacy for these perks. Frankly, that's actually what's going on here. And what happens if you don't want to do that anymore? How willing do you think these men are, right, to still be paying for everything if you're not keeping up your end of the bargain? All things considered, the chances of an average woman, like statistically, right, across the board sort of average, who does not have proximity to wealth, being able to attain the sprinkle lifestyle and actually getting a marriage out of it, let alone a good one, is slim. And when you look at case studies of this strategy being successful, like the example of Neotox, these women will straight up tell you, this attitude, I'm not gonna lift a finger for this man, is not gonna be conducive to attracting, let alone keeping a man of high caliber, if that is your desire. Now, there are always these like statistical outliers that get mentioned in the comments of these videos, but again, you have to take everything you see online with a grain grain of salt. You have no idea what the real life dynamics of these people's relationships look like. I would say looking at real life examples of this strategy being successful is preferable to just random comments where you're really getting no context. But even when it comes to the real life examples, you still have to operate with a healthy level of skepticism, because this is the internet. It's not necessarily that people are lying, which does happen. More often than not, it's that they are omitting certain details. So when it comes to hypergamous dating strategies, I would actually say that listening to Nia Talk's advice on this is probably going to be more advantageous. When it comes to the other prominent figure, sort of within the subculture, is definitely the wizard Liz. Now, she was a woman who would make these motivational, like bougie older sister type videos, where she'd give you pep talks and just sort of general life advice. Very heavy on the invest in yourself first, only date provider men, really emphasizing that mantra. Now, she got booed up with this man, Langdon. Allegedly, she got love bombed because things moved fairly quickly, because they were married with a kid on the way within like a year or two of them meeting. Correct me if I'm wrong. Liz, similar to many of the women in this subculture, was heavily invested in metaphysical manifestation, not just positive thinking. I'm talking like the real sort of crystal version of manifestation. And she claimed that she manifested Landon.
Things down that I appreciate in him and that I want my future husband to have, but I wrote it down as if it's already happened. And then I closed the book, I put it back, and that's it. Now, there's one thing about me. When I try to manifest a relationship, I get it like this. Like, if a partner is like this.
Once you start going down this path, you can convince yourself of literally anything. It's just backwards reasoning and swearing that like, oh, this might not be moving too quickly, or maybe the reason he's perfect on paper isn't because he's being strategic and telling me what I want to hear, especially because I've made an entire career online broadcasting to women what my playbook is, essentially. No, actually, this is a sign from the universe, because I wanted a husband, and just like that, I got him. That's how it works for me. It gives people this false sense of control. He then goes on to cheat on her while she is 4 months pregnant. I'm not trying to blame Liz for what happened to her, which was terrible, okay? All I am saying is that if you believe that you have this much control over your destiny, and you can tap into the universe, and all of this jazz, and when your criteria for choosing men is also primarily financially driven, it gives people this false sense of control, and it can blind them to reality and make them very vulnerable to predators. Now, there were a lot of people using this as an example of what happens when you think you're the exception. You fell for the lie that men actually love you. It's so telling that Liz, expecting to not get cheated on while pregnant, is getting her framed as being naive, that she should have expected the betrayal. What's even more concerning is that these women are not suggesting to refrain from having children with these men that they constantly describe as being incapable of loving properly and referring to them as beasts and animals and such. No, many of them actually are still very intent on being mothers and procreating with these men that they show such seething contempt for. The demonization of these men then, of course, just justifies being able to use them as ATMs, because now, well, it's no longer unethical, right? If a man is openly cheating on you, there is a limit to how much of a good father he can be, because he is showing that he cares about satisfying his fleeting urges more than he cares about keeping the family intact. It speaks to a fundamental selfishness. What they're accidentally revealing, by the way, is that they're so attached to the idea of having a cushy lifestyle where they perform no real life work or domestic labor in the house, that unlike Liz, who actually left Landon, they're not only willing to tolerate this level of betrayal. Not worse than that, actually. They want to normalize this sort of bad behavior from men. You are not responsible for how another person acts. However, if you are still willingly engaging in relationships with these men who are so shameless about their infidelity, it's not even that you're co-signing the behavior, you're actually enabling it. Because instead of just leaving, instead of just being alone and having your peace, and the compromise is that maybe you actually have to have a job and actually clean up your own house. What you're saying is that this sort of behavior should be tolerated as long as there's like a fat paycheck attached to it. And worse off, they're willing to drag children into that toxic dynamic. Because again, many of them still want to become mothers. So not only are you still allowing these men who've openly showed you no loyalty, that you're still willing to be with them, you're going to make them parents, going to grant them the privilege of parenthood, There's no amount of emotional detachment. Okay, no amount of these courses that's going to prepare you for someone cheating on you while you are pregnant. No one is built to endure this. No one. I know this is going to sound harsh, but what this comes off as really is a lot of women having never experienced getting genuine loyalty from a man. So they want to frame the concept of trusting a man as being inherently foolish. So it isn't simply that they can't get loyalty from one. No woman can. It's impossible, you see. It's cope. And what's worse is that they're framing women who have the audacity, I guess, to assume that the man that they're marrying won't betray them as actually being very foolish. You can't trust anyone, remember that. But don't refrain from relationships with these men, though. That's not the logical solution. No. Willingly sign up for that betrayal. And this is apparently you running a game. The red pill men want to desperately normalize infidelity because, well, they want to have their cake and eat it too. They want to have the main squeeze that they use as a broodmare for their future biracial children, but they don't want to have to sacrifice for their family by exercising basic self-restraint and not having a bunch of side pieces. The women in this subculture, however, they refuse to admit that they just value money and material goods over loyalty by reframing loyalty as something that doesn't even exist. Don't you know? And in some of these cases, it seems as if they value this lifestyle more than giving their future children a stable home. Just let's call a spade here. That's why infidelity has to be seen as the default by these individuals, because then instead of having to acknowledge that this materialism and lack of self-restraint, and frankly, their complete and utter lack of respect for the opposite sex that they're still choosing to have relationships with, they can PR spin all of that into, well, actually, we're just accepting reality and human nature for what it is. See, we're the ones running game here. We're the ones who understand the truth. Nah. I am not buying it. I can empathize with people who have been destroyed by someone who they loved, but refusing to heal from that trauma and then trying to convince other vulnerable people to jump into that emotional pit that you've dug is so dangerous. You want to know how to really win in this? I mean, framing this as a game is already so juvenile, but you really want to know how you win this game? You forgive the people who hurt you. You open yourself up to love again. That's winning. That's triumph. It's easier said than done, don't get me wrong. But I have faith that these people can do it. It's not too late for any of them. But cosplaying as this cold, calculated vixen, like you're some sort of Soviet spy, it's not fooling anybody. And all it does is ensure that the person who hurt you wins. They've robbed you of your future happiness. You've completely closed yourself off to a genuine emotional connection and convinced yourself that what, you're playing these men? What's tragic is that these people are playing themselves. Now, here's the thing. The difference between Liz and Shera, and I am not the only one who thinks this, okay, is that Shera probably would have stayed. I mean, I know for a fact she certainly would not have been posting about this. Again, I'm being presumptuous here because I do not actually know this woman. However, based on James's confirmed history of adultery and her attitude towards men straying, it's not that outlandish to suggest that if she had been in Liz's situation, and we don't know if she has been after getting married, that she would have stayed. And there's fans of Shera that have said just as much. So regardless, it's not like either one of these mindsets is actually going to get you loyalty out of a man. It's that Shera's mentality would basically just allow you to accept it, right? Especially if there's a child involved, as long as bills are getting paid. There was another smaller creator who went by the Trophy Wife. She also married well, and she would make hypergamous dating content. And she specifically mentioned Shera as being a sort of, inspiration to her and following her advice. Several months ago, she uploaded a heartbreaking video where she revealed that her husband had been essaying their 2 young daughters. According to her account of the events, things moved fairly quickly between the two of them.
I told my husband, I was like, hey, it was so embarrassing to admit, but I was like, I need a place to stay. And he was saying, well, if you're going to live with me, it's going to be as my wife, not as my girlfriend. And the next time we talked on FaceTime, I was like, I did something. He was like, what did you do? I was like, I got your wedding ring. I had really that habit of spending money. And I was like, if I don't get the ring now, then I'm not going to get it. So I went ahead and got it.
Okay, so off the bat, she was coming from a place of desperation and ignoring massive red flags, like her future husband still being on dating apps after he proposed marriage. Despite, this happening way too quickly. And yet she was still giving women online advice on how to snag a provider man. Listen, this whole situation is terrible, but this is why you have to look at all the content you see online, especially within the subculture, through a lens of healthy skepticism. There's a lot of context behind some of these relationships that is not being broadcasted. There are some details of this story that people have pointed out, like them getting married fairly quickly and her buying her own engagement ring that Shera would have never advised her to do. Listen, and I'm not trying to play the blame game here, but if you are inviting a man into your house where there are children already present, because she had children from a previous relationship, the vetting process needs to be as thorough as possible. And the problem with hyperfixating on money and thinking that, like, you finally snagged, you know, the provider man, is that it can blind you to a lot of red flags. And not only that, but it makes you more vulnerable to predators who can tell immediately. I know what archetype of woman this is. All I gotta do is tell her what she wants to hear and present myself, you know, as the kind of man that she wants, and oh, she'll let me in. And her family suffered the worst possible consequence. And a few other female hypergamy coaches, none of whom were able to actually get married as a result of this dating strategy, I think eventually realized that this was a fruitless endeavor. Some of them became very religious and they no longer make this sort of content. A lot of the artists who popularized the get the bag type music, really providing the soundtrack for this movement, like the City Girls and Saweetie, they don't have great dating track records either. Young Miami from the City Girls, her most recent long-term relationship was with P. Diddy. This mindset, of course, like, cannot protect you from getting betrayed. All it ensures is that you are so emotionally callous and financially invested in this man that you're willing to tolerate it. You know, maybe not the extreme end of the mistreatment of your children, because the trophy wife did leave that man, thank God. But you'll be willing to tolerate everything else and just convince yourself that it doesn't hurt you. Because remember, bills are still getting paid. Sprinkle, sprinkle. This isn't to say that there are not women who have benefited positively from some of Shera's advice.
Say what you want about Shera 7, but her advice worked for me, okay? Ever since I was religiously watching her and actually taking the advice, I found my man. And I've been winning ever since. I kid you not. I kid you not. Because are y'all picking up what I'm putting down? If you're not picking it up, you need to pick it up. Don't be a pick-misha. Pick it up.
I would place the women who have benefited from the sprinkle mindset into 3 categories. It is impossible to get actual stats on the success rate of this strategy because no one's collecting it. So at this point, you just have anecdotal evidence. The first category is women who I would place on the lower end of the financial spectrum. Now, when it comes to most of the advice being doled out in the hypergamous community, you gotta look at it like a buffet. So if you're smart, you'll take the stuff that's practical, you'll leave out the unethical stuff, you know, you'll leave the voodoo tray alone, you're not gonna be messing with married men, but you can reasonably apply some of the other strategies to your life. And I can understand why a lot of people who have a history of being pushovers and not very assertive would be drawn to this community, because there is a great emphasis on setting strict boundaries, not being a pushover, not letting your feelings get in the way, stop being idealistic and putting, you know, this person that you barely know on a pedestal. Filter out candidates that are not on the same wavelength as you and that are not on the same page about, you know, fulfilling that specific traditional male role. Another piece of advice that I can see a lot of people struggling with is just not coming off as desperate, you know what I mean? Like, if he's not showing initiative, if he's not going out of his way to see you or communicate with you, it's because he doesn't want to talk to you. A lot of people really needed this drilled into their heads, right? If a person likes you, they will make the time to see you. Invest in yourself, not just for your own sake, but because it does give you more options. You can apply all of these successfully into your life and see positive results. Especially, and this is something that you cannot forget, okay? Most of these strategies are most successful if you're already at a good starting point. So if you already have something going for you, you're cute, you can do a cartwheel, you have valuable skills. And especially if the factor of proximity is already there, you're already in financially stable circles, checking off those boxes is going to yield the best results. So when you see some of these women sharing their success stories, they're believable because the odds are already in their favor. A lot of these women, well, either got lucky to be born into a relatively good position, or they already did the work to stack the odds in their favor, you know? You also have to take into account that when you see people online saying that this strategy worked for them, you don't know the exact details of what they actually mean, right? So when I say that there's 3 levels to it, it exists on a spectrum of how much they're gaining financially from it. Because you don't know if these women are finding men who are providers, who actually are, good quality men. They might not necessarily be like getting every single one of their bills paid or being taken on like luxury vacations, right? The less financial expectations there are, one, the more options you're going to have in terms of actually finding one of these men who doesn't mind leaning into that traditional role. The less financially precarious it is on your end, and the more likely you are to potentially have a relationship where there is a genuine emotional connection. The foundation of the relationship isn't that he's got like a luxury condo that you live in, So the women that fall into this first category, if they are smart and they play to their strengths, right, they can easily get a man that shows initiative. He'll plan dates, he'll pay for the dates, he'll get things for you on occasion. Like, if you seek it out, you can get that level of chivalrous treatment. That's actually not that unrealistic. You'll probably even be able to find a man that, is willing and able to provide for you and your household when you get married in the future. Again, this is the thing, like, the actual quality of the relationships and the likelihood of you getting it is just a lot higher when the expectation is not that he's gonna be buying you like a Rolls Royce, right, on date number 4. That tends to be women that fall into the second category. So if you are an individual who actually wants to get genuine love, in these marriages, if you still believe in that as a concept, as being feasible, and taking the less selfish approach where you're not just looking to take, but you also want to give and reciprocate that level of energy to your partner, deviating from the sprinkle philosophy in that regard is actually going to be more advantageous. The women in this category are probably going to fare the best, and I think this is also going to be the largest percentage of women who benefit from this mindset. Now, the second level is like you are fully getting tricked on, you're getting bills paid, etc., right? But the more money involved, the more strings are attached to that money, the more emotionally and psychologically taxing it is, and the worse the quality of men are. Now, can you get played by a broke man? Can you get cheated on and find out that, actually he turned out to be married? Yeah, you can find men like that across the socioeconomic spectrum. But again, be for real. If this is a transactional relationship where the guy is forking over all this money, you're being intimate with him and then doing nothing else, the guy sees you as a sugar baby. Make no mistake about it, okay? Especially if he's not dumb. If he's older and he's got all this money, like, how naive do you think this man is, okay? You're not running game on him. He knows what you're doing. If anything, he's the one with all the money. He's the one who has the upper hand. He can pull the plug with a quickness. And if he sees you basically as a girlfriend for pay, the chances that he's actually gonna put a ring on it are, let's be honest, slim to none. And let's be for real, why would he? You're already being intimate with him. He can easily outsource domestic labor, so it's not really like he needed you for that either. Think, it's a foolish long-term strategy. Now the third level, right, the pinnacle of achieving, I was gonna say sprinkledom, but that doesn't even make any sense, is actually getting married to this individual, right? So now you have officially secured the bag. So I will point you to every single thing that I mentioned about the reality of these marriages, right? Not only is this going to be the most statistically rare level to actually reach, the quality of said marriage is going to vary so greatly, and you don't know what end of that spectrum you're going to be on. She says it herself. Her relationship dynamic is not for most. This is the strategy that worked for her. It might not work for you. I don't agree with everything that she says. I certainly don't agree with a lot of the advice that she gives that is just unethical. I don't really know how much you can spin this. She's not presenting herself, as a role model or a good person, but like that doesn't justify messed up behavior. Grow up. But they're not incorrect in the sense that she's not misrepresenting herself. She is telling you, these are the rules of the game. You're a grown adult. If you want to play, then you can play. Honestly, I don't think that most of the women who have involved themselves in this subculture or who are drawn to it are as emotionally closed off as they think they are, which is a good thing. They want to believe that they're mentally strong and like closed and callous enough to be able to survive aspects of this lifestyle, especially the infidelity. The stats regarding how financially well off the average man in this country is already going to make the success rate of this movement lower if the demands are this sort of ludicrous. The success rate is definitely going to be a lot lower than what most of these women desire. I would almost bet money, by the way, that the vast majority of women in these spaces are never going to marry well. You can agree with me or disagree with me, but let me know in the comments down below. What percentage of these individuals do you actually think are going to succeed? And when I mean succeed, I'm talking actually get married to this man and have it be a decent relationship where, you know what, I will open this up. Even when I say decent relationship, by the way, if he is cheating on on you, it's not a decent relationship. It's not, it barely even counts as a marriage in my opinion. How many women do you think are actually going to be able to achieve this? It's not the majority. I mean, that's guaranteed. And here's the thing, if you can't accept that reality, then I know for a fact you're never gonna succeed with this strategy because you can't accept the truth. Now, best case scenario, right? If you beat the odds and you actually end up in one of these marriages, right? I don't believe that these women are so closed off that they will be able to tolerate decades of a marriage to someone they know deep down they don't actually love. It will ensure that you're gonna go to the grave never having healed from the trauma that came from previous relationships. You'll probably end up instilling it in your kids. Marrying someone simply because you love them is foolish. I'm in complete agreement with these ladies here. Finances 100% matter, compatible values matter, but all these red pill dating philosophies do is sell the illusion of control to, I don't want to say broken people because that makes it seem permanent, but they are people who have a lot of emotional damage, when in reality all they're doing is swapping in one form of bad relationships for another and then convincing themselves that it's going to yield better results. The uncomfortable truth is that nothing is guaranteed. There is no optimal dating strategy that's going to eliminate all risk. Best case scenario, improve yourself, you exercise discernment, regulate your emotions, and you find someone with the same values. And if that includes a man who is a provider, then you are fully entitled to seek that out. But these people are never going to have a truly emotionally fulfilling relationship because they're unwilling to be emotionally vulnerable. Which means, of course, that no one who is actually emotionally healthy is going to want to be your partner. They've freed themselves from the prison of limerence and infatuation and hopeless romanticism. But then you just walked right into another cage of being emotionally unavailable and convinced yourself you're now free because what, this prison has golden bars? I've officially exhausted every metaphor in my arsenal. It's a tough pill to swallow that the risk of finding a genuine connection and companionship is heartbreak. And if you can't accept that, then either don't date or you can accept the trade-off that comes with this lifestyle. Let me know if you agree, if you disagree. My yap sesh is over. I know y'all like the earrings. They're shoplifted. I'm just kidding. Someone bought them for me. Anyway, let me know if you agree, disagree. What are your thoughts? What do you think about this movement? I've been milking this topic. Like, comment, and subscribe. Hit that notification bell so you know every time that I upload. And as always, thank you for watching. Shout out to my top patrons. If you want to donate to my Patreon, please click on the link in the description or on screen. Thank you to my other lovely patrons. Your name should be scrolling on screen as I speak. Bye.